Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by saying that communication is the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship. But what happens when we start to rely too much on one form of communication, text? It's easy to get caught up in the convenience of sending a message. But let me ask you this. Do we truly connect when we text? We live in a world that's digitally connected, where messages are sent in a flash. We can tap out a quick hey or what's up in mere seconds. But I want to talk about something that's essential to every relationship, romantic or otherwise: the importance of respecting space, boundaries, and emotional needs. You see, ladies and gentlemen, we must acknowledge that women, just like everyone else, have their own pace, their own rhythm. And sometimes that rhythm doesn't sync with the constant ping of a phone. Just because a message was sent doesn't mean it's always wanted or necessary at that moment. Imagine for a second you're in the middle of something important, a task, a thought process, or simply just relaxing, and the phone buzzes again. And again. It can feel overwhelming, can't it? This constant demand for attention. The truth is, meaningful relationships aren't built on the frequency of messages. They're built on the quality of communication. The understanding that sometimes silence speaks louder than 1,000 texts. Texting, as quick as it is, often misses the nuance of a face-to-face conversation. We lose the tone, the emotion, and the presence that comes with being in the same space. Relationships thrive when we listen, when we respond thoughtfully, and when we truly see each other. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time we start cultivating empathy. That means knowing when to give space, knowing when to listen, and understanding when it's time to pause. We don't need to bombard someone with constant messages to show we care. Sometimes the greatest act of care is respect for their time, their energy, and their need for balance. It's about healthy relationships. Relationships where both people feel heard, respected, and valued. Let's strive for connections that go beyond the digital world, ones that allow space for personal growth, for understanding, and for trust. So next time you think about texting someone, take a moment. Ask yourself, is this the best way to communicate? Is this creating a bond or simply a distraction? Let's stop texting endlessly. Let's start truly connecting. Respecting boundaries is fundamental to building trust and creating meaningful connections with others, especially in the context of communication. In a world where technology has made it easier than ever to stay in touch, it's crucial to remember that the way we communicate matters just as much as the content of our messages. It's easy to send a quick text and expect an immediate response, but doing so without considering the other person's space can lead to feelings of discomfort, overwhelm, and even frustration. Respecting boundaries in communication involves understanding that everyone has different needs when it comes to interaction. Some people are more comfortable with frequent communication, while others prefer less contact or need more space to recharge. These preferences can be influenced by a variety of factors, including personality, mood, the demands of daily life, and the nature of the relationship. What may feel like a simple gesture to one person can be perceived as an invasion of space by another. It's important to acknowledge that, when it comes to relationships, digital communication is not the same as face-to-face interaction. Texting can be quick and convenient, but it also lacks the emotional depth and nuance of in-person conversations. A text message can be easily misinterpreted or come across as impersonal or even intrusive, especially if sent at an inopportune time. For example, sending multiple texts in quick succession, or reaching out at times when the person is likely to be busy or resting, can feel disrespectful, even if that was not the intent. When we fail to respect someone's boundaries with constant texting, we risk putting unnecessary pressure on them. This pressure can cause stress or anxiety, especially if the recipient feels like they have to respond quickly or engage in a conversation when they're not in the right frame of mind. Respecting someone's boundaries means recognizing that they may need time to respond and that it's okay if they don't reply immediately. It's about giving them the space to engage on their own terms, without feeling coerced into an ongoing dialogue simply because we want to keep the conversation going. Boundaries also extend beyond the frequency of messages. The content of our texts matters too. It's essential to recognize that some topics may be sensitive or private and should be approached with care and consideration. Sending text messages that delve into personal or intimate matters without establishing the proper context or relationship can violate someone's emotional boundaries. This kind of communication should be reserved for moments when both parties are comfortable and ready to engage in deeper conversations. Moreover, respecting boundaries means being mindful of how we reach out. It's not just about when or how often we text, but about understanding that sometimes silence is the best response. Not every moment requires communication, and sometimes giving someone space is the most respectful and loving thing we can do. We should ask ourselves whether our desire to text is driven by a genuine wish to connect, or by a need to fulfill our own sense of emotional security. If it's the latter, we must recognize that it's not fair to impose our need for connection on others. In some cases, respecting boundaries can also mean acknowledging when someone may want to initiate communication rather than the other way around. It's about being sensitive to cues and paying attention to nonverbal signals that suggest someone may be feeling overwhelmed or in need of a break. This awareness allows us to adjust our approach and make sure we're not overstepping their personal boundaries. In building healthy and respectful relationships, we must continuously check in with ourselves and with others to ensure that we're honoring boundaries. By doing so, we foster trust, understanding, and emotional safety, which are the foundations of any strong relationship. Healthy communication, whether it's through text, phone calls, or face-to-face interaction, requires mutual respect for personal space and individual needs. It's essential to recognize that no one owes anyone their constant attention or immediate response, and that respecting these boundaries strengthens connections rather than weakening them. Ultimately, respecting boundaries in communication is not about limiting or withholding affection or care. It's about showing that we value and respect the other person's individuality. It's about creating space for them to be themselves, without the pressure of feeling like they have to conform to our expectations or needs. By learning to communicate with this level of respect and mindfulness, we build stronger, more meaningful relationships that are based on mutual understanding and care. Effective communication is at the heart of every healthy relationship. In the age of technology, texting has become one of the most common ways to stay in touch. While texting is certainly convenient, it's important to remember that it cannot replace the depth and richness of face-to-face conversations. Texts are often brief, impersonal, and can easily be misinterpreted. For true, meaningful communication, we need to understand the limitations of texting and learn how to use it in ways that complement, rather than replace, more personal interactions. First, consider the way text messages can strip away essential aspects of communication. When we talk to someone in person, we rely not just on words but also on body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice to fully understand their message. These nonverbal cues give us a deeper sense of what the other person is feeling, which is vital for interpreting the full meaning of their words. In contrast, text messages are void of these cues, making it much harder to gauge the other person's emotional state or intentions. A simple sentence like "I'm fine" can carry a completely different meaning when said with a smile versus typed with a cold or ambiguous tone. Texting, therefore, can lead to misunderstandings, as the sender's intended emotion may not be communicated effectively. This limitation becomes even more significant when we're navigating complex or sensitive topics. Difficult conversations, whether they involve conflict, vulnerability, or important life decisions, are best handled in person. Texting can make these conversations feel distant and detached, and can even exacerbate misunderstandings, as it becomes more difficult to provide the support, empathy, and comfort that might be needed in those situations. When we attempt to discuss sensitive matters through text, we miss the opportunity to read each other's emotional reactions, which are often crucial in finding common ground or offering reassurance. It's easy to misinterpret the intent of a text, and without face-to-face interaction, the emotional nuances that provide clarity and depth in a conversation can be lost. Another important aspect of effective communication is the idea of active listening, which is crucial to truly understanding someone's feelings and needs. When we engage in a conversation in person, we are actively present, focused on the other person, and fully engaged in the moment. Texting, however, often leads to distractions. The fast-paced nature of texting can make it difficult to truly listen to what someone is saying because we're focused not only on responding, but also on keeping the conversation going. We often text in between other activities, which dilutes our attention and makes it harder to engage in meaningful dialogue. In contrast, face-to-face conversations demand full attention, allowing us to listen with both our ears and our eyes, picking up on the unspoken details that often reveal more than words alone. Texting, too, can sometimes create a sense of disconnection because it lacks the depth that face-to-face conversations provide. When we have a conversation in person, we can express empathy, warmth, and understanding through our actions and physical presence. A simple gesture, such as a reassuring touch or a supportive look, can communicate volumes and make the other person feel seen and understood. These physical elements are absent in texting, which often leaves us feeling more isolated or distanced from the person we're communicating with. The absence of these intimate human aspects can result in conversations that feel more transactional than relational. In addition, face-to-face communication allows for the flow of conversation in a natural back-and-forth rhythm. There are pauses, opportunities for reflection, and the ability to easily clarify any misunderstandings as they arise. Texting, on the other hand, can interrupt the natural flow of dialogue. We may feel pressured to respond quickly, even if we're not ready, or we might struggle to articulate our thoughts in a meaningful way due to the limitations of a screen. This constant pressure for instant replies, combined with the inability to have a fluid, organic conversation, can lead to frustration and fatigue. Effective communication isn't just about talking, it's about connecting with others in ways that allow for true understanding and emotional intimacy. While texting can be a useful tool for quick exchanges and staying in touch, it should never replace deeper, more meaningful conversations. Face-to-face communication fosters stronger bonds, creates more authentic connections, and provides an opportunity for individuals to truly engage with each other in ways that texting cannot replicate. By learning to appreciate the value of in-person interaction and using texting as a supplementary tool rather than a primary mode of communication, we can build stronger, more meaningful relationships based on mutual understanding, empathy, and respect. Empathy and awareness are the foundations of all strong relationships, whether they are romantic, familial, or platonic. It's essential to recognize that everyone has their own emotional needs, and being aware of those needs, especially when communicating through text, can make all the difference in how a message is received and how the relationship evolves. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to become so focused on our own thoughts and desires that we forget to consider how our actions might affect others. This lack of awareness can often lead to misunderstandings, frustration, and emotional harm. When we take the time to tune into the emotions of those we communicate with, we demonstrate true empathy and respect for their personal space and feelings. Empathy, at its core, involves understanding and sharing the feelings of another person. It's about recognizing that the other person's emotions are valid and responding with care and understanding. But empathy doesn't stop at simply recognizing how someone else is feeling. It also involves responding in a way that shows you're aware of their emotional needs and willing to adjust your behavior to meet them. In the context of texting, this means understanding when to give someone space, when to provide support, and when to step back entirely. Texting can sometimes feel impersonal and detached. And when we communicate through such a medium, it's easy to overlook the emotional undercurrents that are often present. In face-to-face interactions, we have the advantage of nonverbal cues, body language, tone of voice, facial expressions that help us gauge how the other person is truly feeling. In contrast, text messages often lack these vital emotional markers, leaving us with only the words on the screen. This means we must be even more mindful and sensitive to the context of the conversation when texting. Is the person replying quickly, or are they taking time to respond? Do they seem distant or uninterested, or are they engaging actively? These subtle signals, though small, can offer insight into how the person is feeling and whether they need a break from communication or are open to a deeper conversation. Awareness in communication is about recognizing that people's emotional states can vary widely, and we must adjust our communication style accordingly. For instance, if someone seems short or distracted in their responses, it could be a sign that they are stressed, tired, or simply need some time for themselves. In these moments, it's important to show understanding and respect for their need for space, rather than pushing them to engage further. Pressuring someone to continue a conversation when they're not ready can create unnecessary tension, making them feel as though their boundaries are being ignored. Instead, being aware of these signals allows us to offer kindness and patience and to let the other person know that it's okay to take time for themselves. At the same time, there are moments when empathy means reaching out, even when the other person hasn't initiated contact. If someone is going through a tough time, a simple, thoughtful message, like "I'm here, if you need anything," can go a long way in showing support. It's a way of letting them know that you are attuned to their emotional needs and are offering yourself as a source of comfort without overwhelming them. However, it's also crucial to be aware of how much communication the other person needs. Some people may appreciate the offer of support, while others may feel overwhelmed by too much contact, especially if they're dealing with something personal. This is where empathy and awareness come into play, understanding when to step forward with care, and when to pull back and let the other person take the lead. It's also important to consider the emotional landscape of a relationship. As relationships evolve, so too do the emotional needs of the individuals involved. At the beginning of a relationship, texting may be frequent, lighthearted, and a way to establish connection. Over time, however, as individuals become more comfortable with each other, their emotional needs may shift. One person might want more frequent communication, while the other might prefer less. Being sensitive to these changes and adjusting communication patterns accordingly is key to maintaining a healthy balance. A relationship that lacks awareness of each person's evolving needs can quickly become unbalanced, with one person feeling overwhelmed or neglected while the other feels disconnected. Empathy and awareness also play a role in recognizing that everyone has their own pace when it comes to communication. Some people are more open with their feelings while others may be more reserved. Understanding that everyone processes emotions differently and respecting their communication preferences can help avoid misunderstandings. It's important to remember that someone may need time to process their thoughts before responding, and that's okay. Pressuring them for a reply can create unnecessary stress and strain. Instead, allowing them the space to respond when they're ready shows empathy for their emotional state and an understanding of their individual needs. In essence, empathy and awareness are about being attuned to the emotional world of others. It's about realizing that communication isn't just about the words we say, but about the unspoken feelings and needs that underlie those words. It requires being present in the moment and taking the time to consider how our actions and words impact those we interact with. By cultivating empathy and awareness, we build stronger, more compassionate relationships based on mutual respect, understanding, and emotional safety. These qualities are what help relationships thrive, allowing both people to feel valued, heard, and supported. Healthy relationships are built on trust, mutual respect, and a deep sense of understanding between individuals. It is through these elements that both people can feel safe, valued, and supported. In today's fast-paced and often digitally saturated world, cultivating and maintaining healthy relationships has become increasingly challenging, especially when we rely on text messages for communication. However, establishing and nurturing trust, respect, and emotional safety is more important than ever, as these are the foundations that allow any relationship to thrive. Without these, even the best intentions can falter, leaving both parties feeling misunderstood, neglected, or disconnected. When we talk about building healthy relationships, it's essential to start with trust. Trust is the cornerstone of any successful relationship, and it must be earned over time through consistent actions and words. In the context of texting, trust is built by respecting the other person's boundaries and needs. It's easy to assume that frequent communication means you are building a connection, but constant texting can sometimes create the opposite effect. If one person feels overwhelmed by the frequency or tone of the messages, it can erode the trust that has been established. Instead of feeling supported or heard, they might start feeling pressured or smothered. Respecting the need for space in communication helps preserve the trust that allows a relationship to flourish. Giving someone the space to respond when they're ready rather than bombarding them with multiple messages or demanding an immediate reply allows them to feel in control of the pace of the relationship. This respect for their autonomy and personal boundaries fosters an environment where trust can grow and deepen. It shows that the relationship is not built on constant availability, but on genuine connection and understanding. Mutual respect goes hand in hand with trust and is equally vital in cultivating healthy relationships. To respect someone means to honor their thoughts, feelings, and needs, and to show that you value their time and emotional well-being. In texting, this can be demonstrated in many ways: by listening when the other person expresses their feelings, by being mindful of when to text and when to give them space, and by responding with kindness and consideration. Mutual respect is built through actions, not just words. A respectful relationship doesn't involve pressuring someone to respond immediately or expecting them to prioritize your needs above their own. It's about creating a balance where both individuals feel equally valued and heard. Respect also involves being mindful of how the content of your messages can affect the other person. A message that may seem harmless to one person might come across as insensitive or even hurtful to another. Respecting the other person's feelings and experiences means thinking carefully before sending a text, especially when discussing sensitive topics. Healthy communication allows both parties to express themselves openly, but it also requires the consideration of the other person's emotional state and how they may receive the message. Being aware of the impact your words may have shows that you care about their feelings and are invested in maintaining a positive and respectful dynamic. Emotional safety is another essential component of a healthy relationship. Emotional safety means that both individuals feel comfortable being vulnerable, expressing their true thoughts and feelings, and knowing that they will be met with understanding and empathy. In the realm of texting, emotional safety is compromised when messages are misinterpreted, when one person feels pressured to communicate more than they are comfortable with, or when boundaries are ignored. If one person feels unsafe to express themselves honestly because of how the other person might respond, the relationship begins to break down. Building emotional safety involves creating an environment where both individuals feel supported, respected, and heard. It's about knowing when to step back and when to step forward with empathy and care. This means being aware of when the other person needs space and when they need emotional support. It means recognizing when texting may not be the best medium for discussing important matters and choosing to have those conversations in person, where deeper emotional connections can be made. Emotional safety also involves encouraging open communication and letting the other person know that their feelings are valued, regardless of whether or not they align with your own. Ultimately, healthy relationships are about balance and mutual understanding. It's about finding ways to connect while respecting each other's boundaries and emotional needs. Texting, when used appropriately, can be an excellent tool for staying in touch and expressing care, but it should never replace the depth of face-to-face communication or the richness of emotionally supportive interactions. True connection is built on the foundation of trust, mutual respect, and emotional safety. By cultivating these qualities, both individuals can feel secure in their relationship, knowing that they can express themselves freely and honestly without fear of judgment or misunderstanding. Healthy relationships are not just about constant communication. They are about creating an environment where both people feel emotionally safe, valued, and respected, allowing the relationship to thrive and grow over time.